Hello, everyone. This is Scott Farley with 360 Suite. Thank you for joining us at one of our another 360 Suite webinars. Today's webinar is Making SAP Business Objects Artificially Intelligent. So, in the new world of advanced analytics, data is the key to unlocking your organization's full growth potential, especially data around usage patterns and metrics. One of the most underutilized data repositories at your disposal is your SAP Business Objects platform itself. In today's presentation, we will showcase how one of our clients has been able to leverage usage and metadata captured by their SAP Business Objects platform with a little dose of artificial intelligence to promote user education and increase user adoption. With that, I would like to, before we get started, I would like to just go over our standard webinar protocol here. Please see the chat box provided. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time, and we'll do our best to answer those within the session. Please note, we will be sending you the recording of the session at the end. And of course, when you have, before you leave, you could just take a quick moment and complete the survey. We would really appreciate it. With that, again, my name is Scott Farley. I'm with 360 Suite. I've been here for about 2 years and been in the business objects world for the last 4 years. I am joined by my colleague, Pauline Lancaster. Pauline?
Hi, everyone. This is Pauline. Thanks for joining.
And it is our pleasure to introduce to you Don Collins, one of our clients at UCLA Health. Don, please tell us a little bit about yourself and, of course, about your organization, UCLA Health.
Sure, I would love to. Good morning, everyone. And yeah, thank you for joining. It's my exciting opportunity to be part of this. So, well, I started my computer career on a Texas Instrument TI 99-4A at the age of 14, I guess, programming gaming. But for most of my career, I've worked in the consulting space. I've had opportunity to be on projects for big companies like Pfizer and Goldman Sachs. But primarily, I've gravitated into the healthcare space. And I'm presently serving as a BI administrator on the BI administration team at UCLA Health, which is the healthcare side of the UCLA equation. So I'm certified in SAP Business Objects as well as certified in Microsoft Azure as well, and ICE trained, which is just another add-on certification. So that's a little bit about me. I can, let me just move on and tell you just a little bit about our organization. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of UCLA. UCLA Health is the healthcare side of it. So we're all connected, but there is also a division in terms of kind of how operations are done. So we really do function, the bottom line is we really do function as a healthcare system in the space that I occupy. The main healthcare organization or facility is Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, located in the heart of Westwood Village in Los Angeles. So it's a really cool place to work for. As you can see, we have lots of patients coming through. COVID's been an interesting season for us, and it's been interesting working in the healthcare space during this time. We're really at the epicenter of what's taking place in terms of not only research, but just, you know, impact in terms of what we as employees, you know, have to do and all of that stuff. So Ronald Reagan is the start of it. There's also the Santa Monica UCLA Medical Center in Santa Monica, and that's a smaller facility close by. And then we have a whole conglomerate of facilities that pretty much just populate this Westwood area village that you see listed here. So there's really a healthcare complex. What's not mentioned on this slide too is the family healthcare practices. It's all the physician offices and specialty groups and everything else. We're actually supporting all of them as well. So it's quite an undertaking, quite exciting. It's a really great opportunity. Yeah, so that's a little bit about us and where we sit in industry. Yeah, let me just tell you a little bit about our BI environment. So as you might guess, we have SAP Business Objects. It's running on a 3-node full service uniform cluster. That means all the nodes are completely identical, and it's all behind a load balancer. We're servicing over 1,500 users on a daily basis. Heavy use of crystal reports and some Webi. So we're kind of opposite world in some sense with a lot of organizations, but it's also pretty typical for an Epic implementation. So in the healthcare space, a large popular application used at a lot of hospitals and healthcare systems is called Epic. So that system generates a whole bunch of data for us throughout the organization in the form of its back end Oracle-based database, which is called Clarity. And then we also have a number of data warehouse extracts that are being pulled from there. So we're kind of straddling the fence, so to speak, in terms of the database technologies that the SAP platform is taking advantage of. Lots of Crystal, as we mentioned, and we also have lots of scheduled distributions going out either by email or file extracts to network folders. So lots going on there in terms of the business object side. On the Tableau side, similar story. We have a 3-node full service cluster. It's servicing over 2,200 users. Tableau's different from SAP Business Objects in terms of our implementation in a very typical way. It's more of a self-service, decentralized type of technology that we provide to the users. And you can see that we're doing both file and extract, as well as file-based data sources from Tableau, for those of you familiar with Tableau. What's not mentioned on this slide too, which is our new upcoming that we're in the process of rolling out, is Microsoft Power BI. So again, we're rolling that out to the organization. I'm kind of at the fulcrum point of that on the administrative side, because we're having to figure out all of those fun things, like how are we implementing security? This is a cloud-based application. How do we make sure that only people who should be getting access to what they should be getting access to are getting access to it? All that fun world. So that's actually really, really exciting too. And you know, in the process of that, we're asking ourselves the normal questions, which is how do we audit this data? How do we mine this data? Which is really relevant to our discussion today.
And that's actually a great segue for us. You beat me to the punch. I wanted to know what other technologies you might be having besides Tableau and Business Objects at UCLA Health. But this also gives us a great segue to our first quick poll question here, and that is, which BI technologies are you using today? For those on attending, if you can just take a quick minute and click any of the boxes that apply, we would appreciate it. And we were chatting before the day. I actually live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have fallen below the freezing mark. It's about 28. It was about 28 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, and I grew up in California, and I can tell you, Don, it is not California here.
Yeah, it's a little on the cool side here in Southern California. I think it might actually be 68 degrees today. So.
Oh,
We
well,
call that
still no.
warm
Perfect.
these days.
First and foremost, thank you everyone for chiming in and for posting your technologies. Obviously, we see a 97% for business objects. That's great to hear. 23% for analytics cloud, and of course, high percentages for Tableau and Power BI. Wonderful. So with that, we'll close out that poll. And Don, you can take it away.
Yeah, it sounds good. So let's just jump right into it. So I am sure that most people, and this is not a requirement obviously for being on the webinar, have heard the term AI and artificial intelligence. It's just simply been in the discussion and the conversation around data and data analytics for quite some time now. Nonetheless, I thought I would just lift a definition right off of, oops, I just lost my presentation. Hold on, guys. Yeah, so I thought I would just lift definition right off of the Britannica in order to get us started here and get us grounded. So artificial intelligence is the ability of a digital computer or computer-controlled robots, we love the robots, right, to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. So, you know, that's AI at a really, really high level, right, when we're talking about it almost in an academic sense. But AI is really you know, come into specific applications when we talk about it in the real world. You know, there's facial recognition. That's one aspect of AI, because guess what? Humans can recognize one another, right? So, but then a really practical area has been in the area of what we'll just call it the Amazon paradigm, which is, you know, you're logged on to Amazon, you're checking out a product. In this case, what we have is introduction to SAP Business Objects Web Intelligence, right? And in the process, Amazon, through its elaborate AI algorithms, is able to present to you at the bottom of the screen, right? Customers who bought this item also bought, and you know, they give you a list of recommendations, right? So there's a lot of AI going on behind the scenes to present you that list. And what we're going to do today is we're going to really adopt that paradigm in order to show you how to implement this same type of thing within SAP Business Objects. So, and before we really talk about the components, I just want to say that this is really just one example of many. We're going to touch upon that at the end of the presentation, but this is, for me at least, this is just kind of scratching the surface of what's possible. So with that, let me just get back to, yeah, there we go. Sorry, my webinar still kind of disappeared on me, but it's back. Okay, so anyway, we want to talk about the components, or what I like to call the players, like what's involved in implementing this solution, and how did we go about talking about this? Well, the first player is the obvious, which is SAP Business Objects Enterprise, right? It's your BI platform. Obviously, 97% of you are using SAP Business Objects, so this really doesn't need too much of an introduction. We'll simply say at this point that what's key about Business Objects in this overall solution is the fact that it's being used, right? So not only are users leveraging data analytics, generating data analytics, but in the very process of their usage and activity, they are generating their own data, which we call usage data, right? Who's on the system? When are they logging on? What reports are they running? What schedules are being generated? How long is it taking for reports to be generated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that usage information is going to serve as the backbone of the AI solution that we're discussing today. The next component is 360 eyes. Actually, we jumped ahead to program objects. Let's see, Pauline, can we get the 360 eyes on there too? You can show, yeah, that's fine.
I'll show them. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so 360 eyes is if you're on this webinar, you're probably familiar with what 360 eyes is, but if you're not, let's just, I'll give you that introduction. 360 eyes makes it incredibly, and I'm saying this from a customer perspective. 360 eyes makes it incredibly easy to understand and leverage the information that is generated through your BI platform called metadata. So it's all about user activity, like I mentioned, and it's tough getting at that information without 360 eyes. Let's just say that 360 eyes makes it extremely easy to get that information. So that capture of the usage and metadata is what we are going to use as our basis, really, our repository, in order to drive this AI solution. So with that, I'll hand things over, Pauline, to you, just really to talk about this, because there's really a lot to unpack, as I'm sure you're going to touch upon. So with that,
Okay,
take it away.
thanks, Don. Yeah, just to give you some context, so when Don gets into more of the presentation, you'll know what we're referring to with 360 Eyes for those of you that aren't familiar. So 360 Eyes is one of the solutions in the 360 suite that allows you to extract the metadata about your business objects environment. So 360 Eyes will extract information from the file store, from the CMS, from Auditor, and populate a data mart that then you have available to you over 80 pre-built Webi reports and universes, so you can do analysis on that metadata. We've recently added the ability to extract data services as well. So if you use data services for ETL, you can get the full lineage from your data services all the way to where the object's used on reports. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of give an idea of the kind of information that you can get from 360 Eyes. And these are some reports that are available. So the first one is last document used at the top there, and that's really showing a showing how we combine what's in the CMS, the FRS, and Auditor. So it's all combined. You know, with Auditor, if you're running audit on your business objects environment, you get insight into what's being run. But anything that's not being run, if it hasn't you know, been touched, you're never going to see it on an auditing report. Whereas with 360 Eyes, you get the full picture of what's not being run and what's being run, users that are logging in or not logging into the system, that's down on the left, and then also user activity. You know, when users do log in, what are they doing? Are they refreshing the documents? Are they scheduling them? Are they modifying them? You know, what kind of actions are they taking on those documents? So all of that information is available in Eyes. And then this is a report that shows what's available in the universes or what's used or not used. So looking at the objects. So in the dark, the dark columns where you see that first one on the left, 113 objects, those aren't used in the universe, whereas only 18 are. And this means that those objects, those 113 objects, don't exist on any document in the environment. So this can give you some insight into, you know, do you need to maybe consolidate some universes, remove some universes, that kind of thing to get that information. And this is one that a lot of customers like, the scheduling analysis, being able to see, you know, full picture of what's being scheduled, which ones are most frequently scheduled, the formatting that users are frequently scheduling to, the recurrence. This is definitely you might want to. It looks like we have an hourly 4.9% of them are hourly. Probably want to stop those if they're you know, if we have hourly reports, maybe they're needed. But I had an incident where somebody had one running every 5 minutes and it filled up our system pretty quickly. So getting that insight is helpful. You can get information about what's failing. You can add the prompt values that are being passed to the report. So you can maybe consolidate some schedules, get some information, you know, maybe the user's not passing the proper prompt value, so you can also include the error message. So all of that gives you insight into your scheduling. And then, okay, so this is comparing universes. And this is also one of the things that's really great about 360 Eyes is you have the ability to, every time the jobs run, they generate a snapshot. And what the snapshot is what the environment looked like at that point in time. And you can actually save snapshots in the 360 Eyes database so that you can actually go back in time. The other thing you can do is populate snapshots from other environments. And what that allows you to do is you can compare, you know, universes in the same environment. So I want to see what this universe looked like last week as opposed to now. This particular document that's shown here highlights that shows that there were some modifications to these objects. Maybe the object description was changed, maybe the object name. The rest of the document will actually show, you know, what the more details, the before and after, so you can do that analysis to see what was changed. But you can also do this, maybe you want to compare between UAT and production, what's different between the universes, so that these reports give you that ability to do that as well. And that document on the bottom is comparing the universe security. So you again can do that between environments or points in time in the same environment. So you can see, okay, these groups had this access on last week and this week they don't have access, what changed with the security. So it'll highlight any differences with the security. So that's really helpful to be able to see those differences. And then probably the biggest use case of 360 Eyes is the impact analysis. So this particular document is showing you, it's being filtered by object name. So I want to know where a particular object, in this case, it's snapshot ID, where is that object used in reports? There's a prompt on the report. It'll let you filter on any object you want, and it'll return the path in the document that use those objects. You can do this with any of the components of your report. So SQL, so if you want to look for where certain tables are used, or maybe syntax, variable syntax is used, all of that information is extracted, so you can easily filter on that information and do the impact analysis in your environment. And then this last report is just giving you an overview of, what's available. If you do having those snapshots, you can kind of see trends. So over time, you can see, are more users logging in? So we're adding users, but are they actually logging in? Are more documents getting created? More instances? More documents being refreshed? So having those snapshots is really helpful. To be able to kind of see, where maybe user adoption is if users are logging in, are users adopting the system, or is more usage increasing? So being able to see that, the trends, is really helpful with those documents.
Okay. So this is a great time while Don gets set up to do his portion of the next steps of the presentation. I just want to remind you that if you have any questions from anything you've seen so far, please take a minute and pop those into the chat box provided. And of course, while we're going through, if we see anything that we can answer quickly, we'll do that then. And if not, we will wait till the end and go forward. Okay. So with that, Don?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, and thank you, Pauline. So one of the things I just want to kind of connect in terms of what Pauline was presenting, and one of the things I really like about 360 Eyes is really there's 3 layers of access to that information. There's the reports, there's the universe, and then there's the actual underlying data itself, all of which are accessible through 360. I mention that because in our AI solution, we go directly for the data. And the nice thing about the data, if you've ever accessed data, and I'm sure most of you have at some capacity, it can be really, really cryptic or well organized. So 360 provides a pretty, in my estimation, pretty well organized data model that's pretty understandable. So that's good, because that allows us to leverage our next step. So I want to kind of tell this story in terms of the AI, in terms of just presenting the components, right? We know BusinessObjects is involved. We know 360 Eyes is involved up to this point. But when we started the process of really talking about the solution, okay, how do we increase user adoption? How do we basically provide users some kind of insight into what's going on within their environment beyond themselves, right? We started to really talk about a number of things, and that is, well, how do we generate that AI information, right? And then also, how do we present that to the user? So the SAP Program Object is one of those things that came to mind. Now, many of you may not know what a program object is, but it's a nice feature within BusinessObjects. It's actually very, very simple. It simply gives you the ability to take a script and treat it as a report within the environment, meaning that you can actually put it on a schedule, run it as often as you want. And this provides just a really, really convenient way of automating and scheduling your scripts within SAP. Now, there's different ways of doing this. If you guys have a team that works on any kind of scripts at all, anything, then you can just drop this on a Windows box somewhere and hook it up to Windows Task scheduler and do it that way. But one of the things that we found is really advantageous about the program object is if it's related to business objects, it's all self-contained, meaning that when you go through upgrades or migrations, you know, the program object and the script kind of goes with you. It also can be maintained from within the single platform of business objects. So that makes it actually extremely easy. So we're going to talk about the program object in a little more detail in a moment, and then just you know, show you basically the script that's put together. But yeah, that's the program object piece of it, which basically in our solution generates the user recommendations that in turn are presented. So Pauline, can you just advance to the next step? Yeah, cool. Okay, so the presentation, we will see how that takes place in a moment, but what this 360 suite slide is showing you is really queries that we used in the AI solution in order to directly access the 360i's data. So there's 3 queries here on the screen, and you know, if you're familiar with SQL, this will be of interest. If you're less familiar with SQL, I'll just kind of give you the high level. So there were 3 queries that we found that we needed to generate in order, and again, the objective here is how do we generate user recommendations, right? And from the top, I will say that we generated just a homegrown algorithm, right? But the beauty here is that when you're leveraging 360 data, you could really generate any kind of, you could leverage any kind of AI technology you want, whether it's R code or some other type of technology in order to, you know, get the results you need. We kept it simple to show, number one, that it could be this simple. And number two, it really kind of provides a little more insight into what's going on with the algorithm. So having said that, from the top, the first query is really simple. It just simply generates or pulls back a list of all users that have accessed the Business Objects platform. So it's really, really simple, right? The second one, and the largest one in the middle, is the query that basically generates the top 5 reports that any given user is leveraging. So you might notice right in the middle, I don't know if you can see my cursor that well, but right in the middle, you have a line in there that says an action username in users. And again, don't want to get too much in the weeds with the technology here, but what that thing does is it allows you to throw a list of users at this query. And if it's a single user, it gives you the top 5 reports that user is viewing on a regular basis based on 360i's data, which is great. But if you throw a list of users at it, it does the same thing, but it gives you a consolidated top 5 representing all of those users. And again, from a query perspective, it's really simple, but in terms of its impact, it's great, because what we do is we actually run this query twice. I'll talk about that in a moment, but let's just go down to the third query. The last query simply says, okay, I know what the 5 reports are that this particular user is viewing on a regular basis. What other users are viewing those same reports? So what we do here, and again, I'm going to kind of bring you up to a more of a higher level, is we generate the list of users, and then for each user, we find out what top 5 reports they're viewing. We find out what other users are viewing those top 5 reports. And then we double back to the middle query and we say, okay, of all of those users also viewing these top 5 reports, what are the top 5 of that group? You know, so again, it's kind of a simple algorithm in some sense from an AI perspective, right? So if you're an AI expert, you're like, oh, this is, you know, child's play. But it's also a really powerful way of generating an algorithm that'll basically, at the end of the day, say, here are the user recommendations on a user basis. So, and the end game here is you get 5 reports for each user that represents their recommendations, their personal recommendations based on their unique report viewing activity. All right, so next slide. Okay, so the AI code, we're going to actually run this code just for fun during the demo here shortly, but the AI code, this particular AI code that we chose is written in Java. As far as program objects are concerned, you're not really limited to any language. We find that Java works best within the program object space. Again, if you're doing something else with AI technology, you could run that wherever you want. The end game here is to generate data. Now, I do want to mention that one of the things that we pursued early on is actually having a dynamic way to generate this data that would automatically present it within a web page. What we found, however, is that the presentation to the users that we were wanting within SAP Business Objects, the Workspace technology didn't really support that dynamic way of presenting the data, which was just all fine and well, because anyone who's worked with AI code knows that sometimes generating the recommendations, right, can take some time. It depends on how complex your algorithm is. Ours was pretty instantaneous. It didn't take much to run this this block of code, but it can take a while. So running it in the background, populating a data table with those recommendations, and then subsequently consuming that and presenting it to a user is actually a pretty good way to go. And that's the way we eventually went with. So again, I'm not going to get into the weeds of this code. We will share this code for anyone who is interested. There's like half of you are probably interested, and the other half are like, no, please don't show me the code. But we can make that available afterwards. But the takeaway here is, well, I'll just say this much before we leave this slide. If you just look at the green comments, it'll tell you everything that you need to know. So you can see that we're generating top 5 reports for each user. And then for those users, we're going through the process that I described a moment ago, where we're saying, okay, what other users are using these reports? And then, okay, now generate the real top 5, which represents the recommendations. And that big block of code at the end just simply outputs this. In this case, we're outputting it to an Excel file, a CSV file, but you could output it anywhere, right? Output it to a database table. Okay, next slide. All right, so putting it all together, we have business objects, we have 360 eyes, pulling, extracting, and capturing that usage data. We have the program object that's running the code that I just showed you on a regular basis. What do we do with the data after that? Well, thankfully, we can go right back to SAP Business Objects. In our solution, we generated a Webi report that simply retrieved that information. And the key here to realize, I mean, the Webi report is pretty straightforward in terms of pulling that information in, but the key takeaway for the Webi piece was applying a filter that would simply filter the results based on the current user. So the user that's actually viewing the information, it would automatically filter those contents so that the recommendations displayed are theirs and not somebody else's. So that was really the only tricky thing about the Webi report, but not so tricky, right? Just applying a filter to Webi based on current user. Again, if you have questions about that, I'd be happy to answer those, but it's pretty straightforward approach. And then we just simply apply a BI workspace. So for those of you not familiar with BI workspaces, it's simply a way within Business Objects, been around for a long time, to customize the logon experience. And that's what we finally settled on in terms of, well, how do we present this to the user? We could send them an email and say, hey, here's your recommendations for the week or whatever. But we thought, no, let's give them that real-time experience. Every time they log in, they can see their updated recommendations, as well as do whatever we want them to do. So I'll be demoing this as well. You're getting a screenshot of it, right? But we'll demo it as well. All right, so next slide. Yeah, there we go. So putting it all together then, we have the Business Objects Platform, eyes, Program Object, and then the Webi BI Workspace that we just saw that we're going to be demoing. And again, all of this is driving toward increased user acceptance, promoting user adoption, giving them better insight in terms of what's available on the BI platform. That's really the goal. Again, this is one example that we're implementing, but I'm going to touch upon the fact that really when we're talking about AI, there's all kinds of recommendations that you can make leveraging 360i's data. So with that, I think we're just about ready for the demo. So let's just switch over and let me show my screen. All right, and sanity check if we can. Scott, you can see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So we're basically looking at the BI Launchpad. So the first thing I'm going to show you, we're going to log in and show the results of these users, but the first thing I want to do is just really, really quickly show you the script in action. It's not just a screenshot, it actually works. And for those of you who are a little more geeky, here is basically the script that I showed. And then I basically have just an add-on module just to make things really organized that retrieves the data out of 360. But again, this is just more to see something happening. I'm just going to click on the run button. I'm using Eclipse to run the Java code for those of you who are interested. And basically, it's just going to, yep, just wanted to make sure it's running. Yeah, there we go. So it's outputting basically activity and saying, yes, I'm actually running this query. And, you know, it basically at the end basically says, hey, we've successfully generated the recommendations. Now, like I mentioned, for the purpose of the demo, we actually kept things light because the lighter the better within the demo. We're just generating an Excel file. But in reality, we're generating this and populating a data table that then can be consumed by the Webi report. Okay, so that's the script. And again, taking this script and simply uploading it into Program Objects, if people have questions about that, I'll be happy to answer it. It gets a little geeky and technical, but for those of you who are like, how do I do that? You know, feel free to present those questions. So, all right, so that anyway, that generates the data, right? So we'll just get that out of the way. And now what I'd like to do is real quickly just go to first of all, I want to go to the CMC and show you the program object. Give me just a second here. I have this so I can just kind of automatically log in. It's a little more convenient. Okay, so we created a folder here for the demo purposes called, interestingly enough, demo. And so we have a few assets here that we've discussed, right? So the first one is the workspace. We'll just demo that. That's probably the easiest thing, but you can just create a BI workspace within SAP, right? Then we have the Webi report, which again, we're gonna see as we just demonstrate it live. So I won't spoiler alert that. In this case, for demo, again, for demo purposes, we're simply leveraging an uploaded version of those results, the user recommendations. This would ideally be really a database in the back end. And but what I want to bring your attention to is the program object. So program objects are really easy to upload. Once you have a Java script, you kind of have to craft the script slightly so that SAP recognizes what you're doing. But then you basically just do an add and program file, and it walks you through the process. I'm just going to show the screen. I'm not going to walk through the whole process, but it shows you basically the process of choosing the file, and then you just kind of set it up to run. So let me just get my GoToWebinar panel out of the way so I can close that. There we go. So anyway, uploading the program object is fairly straightforward, low effort, and then you basically have that script running as often as you want it to run. And I'm just going to show this history to show you that, you know, we have the program object, you know, having run successfully twice now. So this would probably be something that you would set up, you know, on a daily basis or whatever. Maybe it's only weekly or monthly that you want to set that up. So yeah, so there's the program object. What I'd like to do now is just show you the experience. So the idea here is the script has been crafted, it's running on a regular basis, it's populating the data behind the scenes, and then we have that Webi report running. In fact, I will show one thing with the Webi report if no one minds here. Let's see. Actually, I'll probably just open it from the BI Launchpad. Well, let's see. My application is wanting to pull that open in a very unusual place. Okay, well, I'll simply talk about that Webi report. I wanted to show you the filter just to show how it was set up, but that's not really mission critical. So let's really talk about the demo experience now. So we have basically two users set up. One is C. Hayes and the other is A. Wilson. And again, this is basically using a single BI workspace that they will see once they log in. with a single Webi report that is dynamically filtering and basically showing them personalized content based on their own viewing activity. So we'll start with C. Hayes. I have an auto log on for her, so let's just use that. Okay, so we're logging in, it's page expired. We'll just do that one more time. All right, so here we go. So as explained, the BI Workspace is a way of just personalizing the login experience. So you'll see here that you're not seeing the normal home tab, right? I do want to touch upon a couple things about that, the login experience and the BI Workspace. That can either be configured within the Preferences tab on a user by user basis. That would be if a user is wanting to personalize their space. But in this case, what you want to do is configure it organizationally for all users. Right, so I won't spend the time of going into that process, but basically you're able to say, hey, here's the corporate workspace that we're using for all users, and then voila, everyone sees the same workspace. But more importantly, let's look at the actual content of the workspace. So I threw in a few filler items here in terms of things that you can decorate your workspace with, you know, recently run documents and whatnot. But the key here is this middle area. This is the Webi report being shown within your workspace. And it is actually it has generated recommendations for this particular user. So you can kind of see it. We're giving it this Amazon type of feel. Other users who view your favorite reports also use the following reports, right? And we have a list of those reports, and they are basically weighted by percentage. The percentages in this case, it's really simple. We're just looking at the number of times viewed overall corporately for all of those users who happen to view the same reports I do, right? So, you know, number of times we simply convert that into a percentage to give it weight, and then you can see that we're actually sorting by weight. One of the cool things that you can do that we haven't done yet is simply provide a hyperlink to those reports as well directly from within the recommendations. And, you know, beyond that, obviously you could get crazy and embellish the recommendations however you want. The important thing though is that it's generating that personal list of recommendations. So take a memory snapshot of this. You can see activity dashboard is at the top and balance sheet is at the bottom because we're going to log out now and then log in as a different user, right? Which is A. Wilson. So I'm just auto logging on here to make it easy. Okay, so Allison Wilson is logged in. Obviously, she's seeing the same corporate workspace. The difference, however, are the recommendations. So you can see that her recommendations, each user's recommendations are basically personalized to their usage. So that's basically it in a nutshell. If we can just recap, we're basically taking 360i's data, leveraging it with just a few queries to generate a simple, I'm calling it simple, it depends on your perspective, but relatively simple process and algorithm, right? And then that algorithm is generating the data that we in turn are just filtering and personalizing for each user by using the BI workspace. And the end result is this, you know, Amazon-like, hey, based on your viewing activity, this is what you might want to check out. So that's the demo in a nutshell. I do want to just talk about a little retrospective and lessons learned. We can look at that next. Pauline, can you show, I think it's the next slide, if I'm viewing the slide correctly. Yeah, there we go. So just kind of a lessons, not so much a lessons learned, but retrospective, what we found is, first of all, 360i's, I've mentioned this a couple times, but it is really true. 360i's, I found to be, in terms of our team implementation of this, really the easiest part. 360i's data model is extremely easy to use. Naturally, you have to have SQL skill in order to generate the queries and stuff like that. But the data model is really, really intuitive, and it's just kind of a well-designed relational model. So don't overlook that in your 360 implementation. It really, really is a powerful way of accessing the data. The other thing that I briefly touched upon is BI workspaces don't support dynamic web. And what I mean by that is that when you build a BI workspace, you can actually display a web page could be a corporate, intranet website. And that in that regard, it is dynamic, but what you can't do that's necessary with this solution is tell that website that's dynamically generating data what user happens to be logged in at that moment within BusinessObjects, because obviously they don't even know what BusinessObjects is, right? It's just a website. So it's important to realize that, because that was our first option of seeing if we could just dynamically serve up this data within the web. And the answer with BI Workspaces is no, it just doesn't have that capability. The other thing, though, we found is that really other AI scenarios can be applied. And again, this is a scenario that really has to do with users and user adoption and providing users insight into their world, so to speak. But I think really a lot of the untapped power in AI as far as your metadata centers around administrative tasks as well. Things like providing administrators could be anything from fraud detection or unexpected performance spikes and drops, right? All of that data that's being captured by 360 Eyes can be leveraged in order to provide even administrators when they're logging in, or again, by way of email alerts, uh, you know, detecting things that otherwise would go not looked. By fraud detection, I just mean if someone's trying to hacking into your system, right? But any of those things, really, the sky's the limit as far as just leveraging that data. We often say within our team that 360 Eyes is kind of like the untapped resource. I mean, we're using it for the basic stuff, everything that Pauline showed, but there's this whole world where that data can be used with upcoming AI technology to really provide some interesting solutions. The last thing I want to point out too is regarding the solution we showed here. It's really fully extensible. I touched upon this. We happen to be using Java and basic SQL, which is really kind of a classic way of coding. But again, if you're using some other kind of AI framework or AI technology, there's nothing preventing you from plugging that AI technology into your solution based on the model that we showed. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just however you're planning to generate that data. As soon as the data is provided, Webi is able to pick up that data and present it to the users. So again, a lot of extensibility in terms of how you may want to take this solution to the next level. So with that, Scott, let me just hand it back over to you.
First and foremost, thank you, Don. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. Yes, for those, I know we have a lot of familiar clients and faces here on this webinar session, but with that, just wanted to quickly, remind and just go over that here at 360 Suite, we've been around for over 13 years, have over 500 active clients with a 96% renewal rate. And the biggest taking part is you've seen a great use case here for 360 Eyes, our metadata management and impact analysis tool, but also that we have over 9 solutions now, or modules, that will allow you to supercharge your BusinessObjects environment and really maximize the ROI within your organization going forward. If you're all interested in regards to doing either having a demo of some of our products or things you've seen before, or if you would like to do or if you have any like to do a trial, please take a minute here in your quick poll and select as many things that you would that you would like that were for you. I know we've had a few questions. We're going to go back through that. Also, if you're interested in getting the AI code that Don went over, please check that box and we'll make sure we get to that to you, and we can go from there. So we'll leave this open for a minute here. And so we'll go with that. Give a few people a little bit more time to get through. Perfect. All right. So with that, we'll go on to the next piece and go on to our Q&A session. So first, for Pauline, where is the 360 Eyes data sitting? Is it in a database? What database?
Yes, yeah, the 360 Eyes is in a database that you provide. It can be, we support a number of different platforms, so Oracle, SQL Server, Don's probably, I think Don might be using SQL Server, HANA, so yeah, we have a number of databases that we support.
Yeah, we're just to add on to that, ours happens to be a SQL Server database that generates the data. It's, I guess, pretty straightforward from that perspective, but yeah, fully accessible.
Great. My next question is the Workspace available? And I can't get the right rest of the question.
In 4.3, yeah.
In 4.3? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it is. Don, do you have, it is available in 4.3. I think it's been
Yeah,
improved actually, yeah.
yeah, more than likely. I haven't tested it. We're still on 4.2, a later service pack of 4.2, but it's been around forever, so I'm sure it's still available. It's just one of those features that is either used heavily or can go overlooked, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. With that, I don't think we have any other questions that pertain directly to this presentation. If we haven't answered a couple of your questions, don't worry, we will have one of our professionals reach out to you with that. But I just want to say again, Don, thank you again for your time. It was great presenting with you. And of course, Pauline, it was great as well.
My pleasure, Scott.
So,
Thanks, yep.
and of course,
Have a good day, everyone.
as just a quick reminder, if you could just do two quick things before we let you go, and that is number one, if you can take the exit survey, we appreciate that. And finally, we will be having a session on December 15th on the Business Objects 4.3 SPO1. So anyways, Service Pack 1. So with that, hope to see you all there, and thank you everyone, and have a great day.